So, demystifying governance in sport. Like I said, I'll host this one, but the hard work will be done by Brendan and Paul as well, who will introduce in just a second. As I said, this is a follow-on webinar to previous webinars, a previous webinar here around organizational development, which you can see in the library area of the iWebinar site. All the materials from this webinar will also be available post the webinar. Give me about a week or so to put that together with the presentation material, the frequently asked questions answered, and the video recordings as well. So all the material from this webinar will be made available. So I can see people still logging in. Welcome, Aaron, and Daisy and Dana, and Paul as well. I can see some familiar faces, familiar names on the webinar. Okay, first of all, I want to introduce to you one of our expert panelists today, Mr. Paul Grogan, who's going to do a little introduction into himself there, and before we get straight into the content.
Thanks, Pete. So, welcome one and all, and thank you for attending. As Pete outlined, this is the second in a series of three, and we would encourage you, those who didn't attend the first one, to log on and have a look, and hopefully it'll be interesting and moderately entertaining. Thank you.
Thanks, Grace. I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will as we go through. Our second panelist here, who's with us today, is Brendan Lynch from Export. Brendan, would you like to say hello?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. And look, hello, everybody. Good to be back again. Those that I haven't met before, I'm a consultant in the sport industry, mainly specialising in areas like strategic planning, governance reform, and then the organisational development and often the change management that comes out of that. But no, look, looking forward to talking to more a little bit later on today.
Terrific. Thanks, Brendan. Thanks very much. What we'd like to do now, before we actually get straight into the content, I want to do a quick poll of our attendees today. It gives us a good idea, doing the poll, about who we've got in as attendees today. It helps Paul and Brendan to kind of framework some of the material that we're going to hear. So I really appreciate if you could, there's a poll should be seeing on your screen now. If you press the button there, if you are from a national sports organisation, a state territory sports organisation, local club or association, a government, either national or state, or other, if you could vote, we're up to about 76% voted. You just press on the screen there. I understand if you're on an iPad that you can't actually vote on the poll in an iPad. So sorry about that, but we're up to about 85% voted. If you could vote, if you can, there, that will help. Okay, I'm going to close it off very soon. Okay, thank you very much. We have 32% from national sports organisations here, 23% from government, and then about the same from state territory sports organisations and other. That's who we've got live right now on the webinar, which is very good information for us, like I said. Okay, we're going to go straight now into content. Our first speaker here will be Mr. Paul Grogan. Grogan, it's all yours.
Thanks, Pete. Hello again. As was said, this is the second in a three-part series looking at the major responsibilities of a board. I suppose one of the clarifying issues is we're framing this around a board which is predominantly a governor relationship, which means they've got staff, a CEO, general manager, and so it's in that context that most of the content is provided. We do acknowledge, of course, there many organisations have no staff, and therefore the board oscillates between being governors and managers and having to roll their sleeves up. So, but just to be conscious, we're just framing this predominantly in that first set. So the first session we talked about getting the structures right. And also, Brendan talked about getting the strategic directions. What we're trying to do now is to look at what are the processes that a board should have in place that allow it to operate effectively. And then Brendan's going to talk about how some of those translate into directing the CEO and some of the pros and cons, the do's and don'ts that are involved in that. It's a bit of an eclectic mix. Good process, a bit like good parenting. It's hard to say where it starts and finishes. But the picture in the top left-hand corner, I think, is probably the most critical. And it is that a board, while being a group of individuals and bringing their strengths and efforts to the board, need to operate in a single-minded way, in the fact that once they've come to their resolution, that the board sticks to it and operates as a single entity, and you don't have this fragmentation and breakdown in board solidarity. Looking at things like job descriptions, board evaluation, the 3 levels of policy, which we've talked about in the previous webinar, a little bit on risk management. So we'll launch in, but as I say, it's a bit of an eclectic mix. There's no particular logical sequence. It's more of a shopping trip to pick up some good ideas, and remembering, of course, you can always go back to the screens later on when Pete puts them up and just download them and use that information. One of the things that I used in the first seminar was this sort of principle that there's a lot of reluctance in the sports sector to doing things differently, because simply we've always done it that way. So one of the first challenges from a process point of view is encouraging people to be a little bit adventurous. And that's why I like this Mark Twain saying that says, why not go out on a limb? Isn't that where the fruit is? Because folded arms and pursed lips are something I think we all get used to in the sports sector when we talk about change and doing things differently.